Let's get you caught up on all of the expansion news today. And again, the question becomes, can the Pac-12 survive? And it's shocking to say it, but I think this news out of the Big Ten pushed back the doomsday clock a little bit for the Pac-12, and here's why. The news out of the Big Ten today is that they will not go to 20 teams. The Big Ten has said that they will not go past 18 at this moment in time, which means that they are going to add Oregon and Washington, which at this point is a formality according to our sources that we spoke to about this. They've had Oregon and Washington penciled out for months. We reported this first, May 24th, on this show, that the Big Ten was looking at Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal. Those four schools have been ready to rock and roll since October when these conversations started. The difference now is that the Big Ten doesn't want to go to 20. One, because the scheduling process, the running of the conference with 20 universities is a very, very arduous task. That's number one. But number two, we're just getting started in realignment. You look at all the tumult and turmoil in the ACC. You look at the fact that Notre Dame at some point is going to be forced to join a conference because how long after realignment, when the Big Ten's got 18 teams, when the Big 12 likely has 16 teams, how long can Notre Dame go making schedules with teams as an independent? It's going to become very difficult, especially when the era in college football flips over and we all start playing 9 conference games. And then that eventually, because when you go to 20 teams, don't you have to play 10 conference games?
100%.
I think you're going to have to.
Facts.
Notre Dame's not going to have a schedule unless they join a conference. I think the Big Ten and everybody else in college athletics is aware of that. Notre Dame football is an independent. The rest of their sports are in the ACC. But as a football powerhouse, Notre Dame is an independent. And I believe eventually they wind up in the Big Ten. I think that is an overarching reason that the Big Ten is going to stop right here today at 18 with Oregon and Washington. I think that is a huge factor. The biggest question now remains, what happens to Stanford and Cal? Because they instantly become schools without a home. Because in fact, if what we all think is going to happen, Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah join Colorado in the Big 12, the Pac-3 is dead. There is only one route. That's a merger with the Mountain West. Are you really sitting here today telling me Stanford and Cal join Oregon State and Washington State in the Mountain West?
Yes.
Jake, that just seems such a foreign concept to me.
Yeah, I mean, it is a foreign concept, but I think it's the reality of the situation. And unfortunately, I don't think it's too much of an exaggeration to say we're entering a new reality in college football. We're entering... Listen, a chapter is closed. Like, let's be really honest about this. The concept of a conference dying has been around for a long time, right? We've talked about, realignment has always sparked the conversation of, well, what would happen if the Big Ten or the SEC stepped in and ponied up money and started poaching teams? That's not a new conversation. We've been having that conversation for long-ass time on our show and obviously every other show. And so now we're in a place where we're starting to see not the Big Ten and the SEC coming in and just setting fire to all these conferences. That's not what's happened here. The Pac-12 has come out of the dark and run themselves into the ground, which has lit fire to realignment, which has put schools like Stanford and Cal, who put their trust in Larry Scott, who put their trust in George Kliavkoff, who put their trust in poor leadership, and now they're going to pay the price. So, yeah, that $4 million per school TV deal that's rocking in the Mountain West right now is going to have to get redone. That money's definitely going to have to get bumped up a little bit. But to me, it's just it's the natural progression because, again, when you take athletics for granted and academia thinks it's not a big deal, this is the position you get put in.
Excellent. I totally agree. When you take it for granted, I think you put yourself in a position where people take you for granted. I think that's an excellent point. Absolutely. Let's get your comments in here. Please go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. We try to get to 1,000 likes every show. We are halfway home. 528 likes in the first hour. Please, if you have not, all 2,700 of you, hit the like button. Let's get it done right now. And by the way, if you have not joined our membership in 2 ways, hit subscribe on the channel. We are just 406 subscriptions away. Free. It's free to hit the subscribe button. 406 of you hit the subscribe button right now. We'd be at 22,000.
Let's go.
We are trying to get to 25,000 by kickoff of college football season. Please hit the thumbs up to give us a like. That really helps our channel. And subscribe if you have not. And let's read your comments. You guys know how important we take you guys. We get over 5,000 comments a show. Car Wash Channel, one of our newest members to the members only content, by the way.
Me, brother.
Make sure you DM Jake. Is it official? Is Utah going to the Big 12? It is not official.
It is far from official.
It will become official tonight when Arizona and Arizona State move to the Big 12, which I think will be announced tomorrow. I think that's going to be the tipping point because I don't believe the Big 10 will act until Arizona acts. Once Arizona acts, I think the Big 10 will take the time to announce Oregon and Washington to the Big 10. I think then Arizona State, and Utah go to the Big 12. Mm-hmm. The playlists is the vibe that Utah isn't in for the Big 12 anymore. Not at all. And I think much like Arizona State, I don't think that there was ever a vibe that Utah didn't want to join the Big 12 or that Utah looked down on the Big 12. And again, it's weird. Here we are defending Utah again. I don't believe that that was ever the sentiment of the people that we speak to at Utah. And we have spoken to people at the highest level at Utah. Yeah. At no time has anybody that we've ever spoken to at Utah disrespected the Big 12, had a disparaging word about the Big 12. What we have consistently reported and what we have consistently been told by the upper arches at Utah, our biggest concern with joining the Big 12 is we believe that we will lose revenue through research and academics, which is almost certain to happen. But now that things have changed significantly with Colorado and this conference is teetering on extinction, I don't think you can worry about that, as Jake just talked about. I don't think you can worry about your academics and look past your athletics, which I don't believe Utah did. I think, though, that tides have changed. And I think now Utah, as we've reported, has been talking to Arizona State, and the Big 12 about this process and how this needs to get done. Because there is a process at all three schools, Arizona State, and Utah. That process largely will get polished off tonight at the Arizona Board of Regents meeting at 6 o'clock Pacific. And then I think Utah has to act. We've spoke to people at Utah just before the show started. There is no Board of Trustees meeting tonight at Utah, as many have asked me about. There is not one scheduled. They flatly denied there was going to be one. I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to hoodwink us. We'll find out. But the bottom line is, I don't believe anybody in management at Utah ever looked down their nose at the Big 12.
Well, and I think what everyone goes to is, well, wait a minute. Didn't Utah say that academically the Big 12 is not a fit? Well, yeah, they did, but that doesn't mean they looked down their nose. I think at that time the conversation in the Pac-12 was, hey, we're going to get a deal done. We're waiting for Georgia to present it. We feel good about the opportunity. We feel good about the fact that there is a deal coming. And I know you can all hate on that and disagree and call it stupid, and I have my own thoughts about the fact that they've made some poor choices here. But the reality of the situation for Utah is they were in that group, and they were bringing calm to the conference. And I don't think it should be characterized as they were looking down their nose. I do think that Utah cares more about academics than they do athletics. That is true. However, I do think that Utah, at this point, cares more about survival than they do academics. And so we've kind of graduated to, okay, the writing's on the wall with this TV deal that's never going to come. Now we need to make a call to Bobby Robbins. We need to make a call to Brett Yormark. We need to make a call to ASU, and we need to get in that conversation, which they've done. So ultimately, And unfortunately for Utah, it's out of their control at this stage. Like
Very
right
much
now,
so.
as we talk about this, it's not in Utah's control. It's in Bobby Robbins' control and Michael Crow's control.
Very much.
And if the meeting goes well tonight, and those two leave that meeting on the same page, Utah should be in the Big 12.
Very much. That's what we've been led to believe is going to happen, for certain. Shooter, Texas. I've been telling you for months that Stanford and Cal were not going to the Big Ten. You said I was crazy and I didn't know what I was talking about. I think up until 3 days ago, I would have probably told you were crazy and you didn't know what you were talking about. But I think the big change here was the instability in the ACC. Now, I also think, and did we get that graphic, Jake? There also is the North Carolina athletic director pretty much surmised what we have been saying for months on this show.
Bubba Cunningham.
Bubba Cunningham at North Carolina on 99.9 The Fan said, quote, I don't think it's good for our league for Florida State to be out there barking like that. I'd rather see them be a good member of the league, support the league, and if they have to make a decision, then so be it. And I think it's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Florida State loves them some Florida State. And it's embarrassing that you have been ripping your membership as bad conference members, as, conference members not carrying their weight. Because this is what Florida State's been saying.
Mm-hmm.
We're the ones that make all the money. We're the ones that bring the notoriety. You're not the ones that win, but never mind that. And now you have the athletic director at North Carolina kicking you in the bag, telling you to shut up, but yet you need to turn around and ask him to help you run a coup on the ACC because you believe you belong in a better, more revenue-generating conference. To which I say you don't. You deserve what you've earned, and I don't believe Florida State's earned anything.
And so then you take what Florida State thought they were doing, which was barking up the ACC tree and trying to attempt a coup and everything he just said. Well, what have they really done? To the commenter's point, right? Shooter, Texas. Take your victory lap, dude, because back then you had no freaking clue that FSU was going to run their mouth and create instability in the ACC, which then in turn got Tony Petitti's attention because Tony Petitti is now saying, okay, we can't go to 20 now. Sorry, Stanford and Cal, we're not going to 20 because Buddy over here at FSU is bringing instability to the ACC, and we know when that grant of rights is done, there's going to be opportunity for us to swallow up brands like Duke and UNC, maybe Florida State, I don't know. That's why the conversation changed. So yes, credit to you, dude. You ended up being right. You got lucky, right? You didn't know that they were not going off of anything someone told you or whatever. You didn't know that. The reason it changed is because of what FSU is doing. And the Big Ten has vision. It's why they have the biggest TV contract.
That's
right. Why they're in control. It's why they are the top dog financially. But again, it comes back to winning and doing good business. And I can make a really strong case the Big Ten does not do nearly enough winning in that conference.
And I'm just telling you now. I'm telling you now, this is a brilliant business decision by the Big Ten. Because it'd be easy to absorb Stanford and Cal as a decision. I'm not saying logistically, but it'd be easy to say, oh, yeah, Stanford and Cal, Bay Area, TV audience, revenue generators, academics, athletics. Yeah, our constituents, our alumni would love this. That'd be an easy decision. The right decision in my mind is what they're doing. I think what they are doing is smart because I think eventually, again, Notre Dame winds up in the Big Ten, and I think eventually, are we really going to see a day where conferences will have 24, 30 teams?
I think that's impossible until there is restructuring in how grant of rights is done, and there's restructuring in how schools get paid for their distribution because the grant of rights model has limitations.
I agree.
Schools like Ohio State and Michigan and Oregon and Washington are not going to continue to grant their rights
totally agree.
to a conference when when they need to give away 3/4 of that pie to schools that don't do a damn thing in athletics.
Yeah. I just go back to this, and I know Chris Kohler said, well said, Monty, it's total negligence on the part of Larry Scott and George Kliavkoff, not ESPN and Fox.
Yeah.
And there is this thing we do, and this is probably a reach. We shame the rich in this country. We always have, and we probably always will. Don't shame the rich in TV because they're doing exactly what you would do if you were making their business decisions. The idea that ESPN and Fox are the villains here is completely ridiculous. Larry Scott, the former commissioner of the Pac-12, is the villain here. George Kliavkoff's buffoonery and incompetence is the villain here, right? And the sad part is now, is there anybody watching this show right now here today who believes that George Kliavkoff will do what's necessary to save the remaining passengers on his sinking ship, which is call Gloria Nevarez and make it happen? Make a merger happen today. If those phone calls haven't happened, and I've heard the rumblings that he has called, and he has called the ACC, and we get it. I won't believe that George Kliavkoff is going to do what's best for anybody but himself until he does what's best for somebody other than himself.
Actions over words.
Because George Kliavkoff has been an abject failure as the commissioner of the Pac-12. Larry Scott, by not doing a deal with Google and not biting the bullet and getting the Pac-12 networks on DirecTV, failed for everybody but himself. And Larry Scott, the former commissioner of the Pac-12, who was flying fucking private jets all over the country, who was staying in the penthouse suite at the Aria in Las Vegas, who had the nicest office suites downtown San Francisco, who was throwing money away, burning it like it was just never going to run out. That's the guy who put this conference in this position. Because I'll say what I've said for a year. This is a historic failure. We've never seen a failure in sports of this proportion. This isn't the old USFL. This isn't none of that. What this is right here is malfeasance. It is absolutely fraud against your membership, in my opinion. You are derelict in your duty. It's not ESPN's fault that George Kliavkoff wouldn't pick up the phone and talk to Brett Yormark about a merger. That's George Kliavkoff's fault because his TV partners told him to do it, and he said no. Is that on ESPN? It's not. Is that on Fox? It's not. They warned him this was coming. But no, you had to get into your exclusive negotiating window. No, you had to value your conference at one point at $500 million a year with TV partners, allegedly. You are, in my opinion, you're a grifter, George Kliavkoff, because you had no business ever taking the job. Mm-hmm. You were in over your head from day one. And I don't care that you were thrown into the deepest end of the pool with no fins. Nobody cares. You either swim or you die, and you're dead.
Well, and there was clearly a path to this conference surviving and thriving. There absolutely was.
It's absolute buffoonery, man.
Yeah.
And I'm a passionate Pac-12 believer. I'm a fan of the Pac-12. I've covered this league for a long time. Well, it just never had to happen.
Yeah, and I think the fall from grace is immense. I mean, I look at, you look back to the great Pete Carroll USC teams. You look back to the great UCLA basketball teams. You look back to all the great Oregon teams on the football field and on the basketball court a few years, right? Like, there have been awesome sporting teams in this conference. But none of that, unfortunately, matters now.
None.
Because I think it's fair to say the Pac-12's arrogance is quite literally killing them. And unfortunately, now we're seeing it pan out. And yeah, schools like Stanford and Cal and Oregon State and Wazoo are going to pay the price for that. And I think it's a lesson learned for them, but ultimately a lesson learned for schools that make it to another conference. And I have to say, I respect the folks up at Utah and love them, but You wandered far too close to the Mountain West in this situation, in my opinion, because.
But look at Jake Dickert. Jake played me a video right before the show of Washington State football coach Jake Dickert.
Yeah.
Saying that, and his exact quote was, the old question of how long would it take TV money to destroy college football, when bemoaning the current state of the Pac-12. Really? Really? Jake Dickert. When you're looking at Nick Rolovich suing Washington State, the state of Washington, and I believe the NCAA, you're going to blame TV money. Jake Dickert. You're going to look at your TV deal and the lack thereof, and the lack of distribution, and the lack of quality scheduling, and the lack of quality officiating, the lack of quality partnerships, the lack of revenue generation. You're going to look at all of that, and you're going to blame TV money, Jake Dickert. That's why you're a football coach at Washington State. Enjoy the Mountain West. If you still have a football program at Washington State, because guess what? That's not guaranteed either. With the great Kirk Schultz, everybody's favorite, accountant who can't even keep his own staff happy, running your athletic department budget. Good luck.
Yeah, and by the way, I might add that it wasn't the TV
Unbelievable.
partner's choice not to merge. It wasn't the TV's partner choice not to put you on DirecTV. Right?
It's
it wasn't
unthinkable, man.
It wasn't Google's prerogative not to have you on YouTube TV. Right? And that's where I had an issue with that. And again, I always maintain this. Notice the difference between Dan Lanning and Jake Dickert. The difference is Dan Lanning is sitting on a mountaintop at Autzen, on top of a program that's partnered with Nike, on top of a program that if I said, hey, in 3 years, Oregon is going to be right back in the Final Four of the college football playoff.
Man.
Would you be at all surprised if Oregon gets into the Big Ten and within 3 years they're playing Ohio State for a conference championship and they somehow find a way to beat Ohio State and they go to the college football New Year's Six implication bowl? Would anyone be surprised? No, you would be surprised about Washington State, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. Tom Dean gives us $2 to say the PAC 2.0 is Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, Washington State, San Diego, SMU, and Boise State, with a tie-in to Sheila's Beauty Salon Bowl in March, where they play that game on a sand lot.
I hope they don't do that. Honestly, I hope we don't have to have the conversation of how do we downgrade the Pac-6 to a G5.
Can't do it.
Or I guess at that point a G6.
Can't do it. OG Gary, $2 to say Stanford and Cal should push to the Ivy League. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Nate Simons for $5. If the Big Ten adds Oregon and Washington, do you think the SEC will react and take 2 schools from the Big 12? They can't take 2 schools from the Big 12. Everybody in the Big 12 has a grant of rights.
Yeah, and I also think that the SEC would be wise here not to do nothing.
And the SEC knows they don't need to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, you just picked up 2 of the most iconic brands in college football, right? And I know Oklahoma's down after Lincoln, but still, an iconic program. Texas, big expectations this year. I might even say after Big 12 Media Day, bigger expectations than they've ever had, based on what Sark had said and Jade Barron said, and just the things that they're talking about, Barron. Right? Like those guys have expectations, and so when I look at the SEC and I say, okay, hey, yeah, Texas and Alabama, yeah, dude, that's a big deal, right? Like,
yeah,
the SEC doesn't need to act right now. What the SEC needs to do is keep the totem pole of winning in order. Continue from a conference standpoint. Continue to put Georgia and Alabama in the college football championship game. And if Texas can get there, you're in a really strong position for the next wave of realignment that's inevitably going to happen. And if you've made all that college football playoff money, because this is what everyone forgets, every single year you're going to get paid out, and that payment is spread out over 5 years. So you're looking at 30 years of payments out of the college football playoff. By the time you need that war chest of money to go out and get teams and work with TV partners, you're going to be in a strong position. So they don't need to do anything now, dude.
Preach.
You don't need to do anything now, dude.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, dude, I got this stuff on lock, bro.
Cyclone Steve for $2 with the 12 say no to U of U, ASU, and yes to Stanford and would the Big 12 say no to Utah and Arizona State and yes to Stanford and Oregon State? No.
No
chance.
No.
Dabo's 805 winning percentage. Pac-12 owns the rights to the Pac-16, so when Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, and Wazoo merge with the Mountain West, they are good, and Gloria needs to be commissioner.
Another process we've never seen play out, right? So let me...
Never seen it.
And nobody has an answer to this. I just think it's a wild question that we get to ask now. So if these two conferences merge, or the remnants of the Pac and the Mountain West merge, what is the process for deciding Gloria or George? Well, that process to me is quite obvious. It's a vote among the presidents. And if they inevitably go with Gloria, George is going to take his paycheck and ride off into the sunset and find another company to destroy. That's what we're talking about.
I don't see any way, shape, or form that George Kliavkoff is allowed to touch anybody else's steering wheel ever in college athletics. He has been... I don't know him. It's not personal. He is an embarrassment. He is a failure. He did not execute.
Yeah.
He did not act when action was necessary.
It is an egregious misstep with this. I'm talking about... Do you guys understand? Like, there's a difference between having an average-ass conference and ending your conference. Like, the gap between your conference being dead and being the worst P5 is massive. You really got to mess that up, man.
You got to try.
Yeah. Like, you got to work hard.
Let's see. RJC Man gives us $5. Thank you, Scott Yeager. Scott Yeagermeister. Because you haven't heard that one 1,000 times. Says, what would a media deal look like? Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, Washington State, and the Mountain West. Does CBS have any more money? Do you think they could get $10 million? I think that's the number that's in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, honest to goodness, dude, I think that ends your life at Washington State.
I was going to say, bro, like,
I don't know how you survive on $10 million a year. If you're Washington State, you're broke. I'm not exaggerating this. And again, as bad as George Kliavkoff is, Kirk Schultz is just as bad.
Yeah.
You're broke. Do you guys understand the story we broke on this show that now so many people have reported? There was a staff revolt. Like, his staff at Washington State was allegedly threatening to sit in, which means they were going to go to his office and trap him in his office until he spoke to them. And they were not going to work until he spoke to them. They were going to shut down the university until he came and was accountable for the finances in the athletic department. From my opinion, his staff believes, in the things I've heard, his staff believes that he overspent recklessly on athletics. And so what did he do? He issued a letter essentially explaining that there was a spending freeze that includes a hiring freeze until a full audit of the budget was done.
Think about what Kirk Schultz does not have to work with, right? And again, I only say this to put into perspective just how much he messed this up. Washington State has not excelled in football or basketball in quite some time. So you're not getting college football playoff payments that I keep talking about, right? And I hope people understand this because it matters in realignment big time. So when you're $70 million in the hole, when you're so far in the hole that your staff is doing a sit-in, you begin to understand that this guy is incredibly irresponsible, yet somehow, and this is typical Pac-12 behavior, yet somehow is the chairman of your board of directors.
Let that sink in.
Somehow.
Let that sink in. And for the second time, a president leaving the conference is on the board of directors with Bobby Robbins.
Unreal.
It's unthinkable. Salty Drunk, what's up, my guy? Says, what's up, guys? Can't wait for actual football.
Dude,
kicks off tonight.
Dude, you're telling me, bro.
We have so much planned for the football season. I am so excited, and it'll essentially, I think, some point next week, we will be able to announce a major major deal for our show.
Yeah.
Like something that we are really excited about. I think
that involves you guys.
Yeah. I think that will be next week.
Yeah.
There's just so much coming.
Oh, you know what we should be saying? A deal is imminent.
A deal is imminent now. And I mean, listen, I would announce that deal today, but on purpose I'm not, because I want the focus to be on that I'm on purpose not announcing.
Pardon me.
See, what happened was... I'm on purpose not announcing the deal because we want the focus to be on Jake's virginity. Nothing else today. Nothing else.
What an iconic moment, dude.
People ask Jake all the time, are you really a virgin? They'll be like, hey, bro, nice to meet you. I love the show.
By the way, hey, bro, are you really a virgin? My sister's pretty flexible, man. She's got room on her schedule. I have her. Here's her number. You want to text her? We'll take care of it.
I need a dick.
Bruh.
So good. Jim Munson, Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, Washington State, plus the Mountain West, add SMU and Tulane with that 18-team Super G5 or low-end P5. G5.
G5, but I think there's a conversation coming, and I don't see it happening yet, but there's a conversation coming in college football where, again, the trickle down of P5s eating each other is going to lead to top-end G5s making more money. And schools are going to have to make a choice. Hey, do we want to be a low-end P5 that never makes the playoff?
Yeah.
Or do we want to be a top-end comfortable G5?
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Depressed Snoopy, who's been a member of the show for a month. Thank you, Snoopy. Stanford and Cal should form a league with the best academic G5s. No doubt about it. Dabo's winning percentage, so is San Diego State getting the pro rata they deserve.
Dude. I mean, you're on point with it. I mean, that's one of the dumbest things any president's ever said.
How do unqualified people wind up in positions of leadership?
Yeah, can I get paid millions of dollars to run conferences into the ground? Like, I'll happily take the money.
I don't get it. I mean, honestly and truly, I don't get it. The Monty Show every single day is presented by our good friends at The Advocates, theadvocates.com, the best injury attorneys in the business. And you guys, before we get back to talking about all this and we read your comments, take a minute and ask yourself, what happens if you get hurt at work? Do you have a plan in place? If you are somebody that, yeah, absolutely a construction worker, if you're somebody that drives a forklift, a truck, if you drive a car, if you're in a position where you trip and fall at work and you break your arm, what are you going to do? Are you going to rely on your company and their lawyers and their workman's comp insurance to take care of you? Or are you going to rely on the professionals who are never going to ask you to reach in your pocket to pay them? Because at the Advocates, you don't pay the Advocates unless and until they win your case. So for workman's comp, they're the best in the business, so much so that you can get on their website, theadvocates.com. Right now, no matter where you're watching this show, theadvocates.com, you can chat with an attorney for free. Did you get hurt at work? Did your husband? Did your wife? Did your brother? Did your best friend? Theadvocates.com. Did you get in a car accident? I know so many people are out on their scooters, their bicycles, their motorcycles. If you get in an accident, have a plan already in place. Say to yourself every day, hey, if I get in a car accident today, call in the Advocates. Hey, I'm riding my bike this weekend. Me and my wife are going up to Bear Lake on the Kawasaki. I'm going to call the Advocates if anything happens. Have it in the front of your mind because you have to be prepared for the worst while enjoying the best. The Advocates, the best injury attorneys in the business. Chat with an attorney live online for free 24/7 at theadvocates.com. Let's keep getting your comments in here on college football realignment. And again, to kind of reset the whole story, we are just 3 hours away, less than 3 hours away now, 2.5 hours away from a massive meeting. The Arizona Board of Regents meets tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific time in an executive session where they will likely make a decision about Arizona and Arizona State's future and whether they are tied together and moving to the Big 12. We believe from sourcing, we have been told that Arizona and Arizona State will move to the Big 12 together, which will then trigger Utah to join them. The Big 12 will go to 16 teams with Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. The other big story today, out of the Big 10. The Big 10, according to our sources, will not go to 20 teams today. They will go to 18 because they believe that realignment is just getting started. Now, they have a grant of rights, the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12. But we know how things change and how quickly things change. The Big 10 wants flexibility because if Notre Dame is forced at some point to join a conference, the Big 10 wants Notre Dame to join the Big 10. And if the ACC, for instance, melts down, they want to be in position. I think it's North Carolina before Florida State. That's just my opinion. But the Big 10 wants to be in a position to act. And if they are at 20 teams, our sources have told us the Big 10 feels like they'd be landlocked at 20 because that's already a massive number to deal with at 18. 20 is just untenable just from a standpoint of making a schedule. Those are certainly the two biggest stories today. And I think the offshoot is who's left in the wreckage here. You look at Cal and Stanford, Oregon State, Washington State. Certainly, they're going to play the victim card here. There is no doubt about that. But what do you say to somebody like San Diego State? Because I don't think there's any doubt San Diego State's a victim of their own stupidity. But I also don't think there's any doubt they are a victim of the Pac-12's malfeasance and irresponsible actions. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Your thoughts, as always, are welcome. You make the show. Please hit the like button. We are looking to get to 1,000. We're just 260 likes away. There's 2,500 people watching the show. If you have not, please give us a thumbs up. Hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. As well, if you are not a subscriber to our channel, it costs you nothing. Please consider hitting the subscribe button. We are just, you guys, we are 377 subscribers away from 22,000.
I want it.
Let's get it done today. Let's get it done today. 373 of you, please hit the subscribe button. Everybody hit the like button. Let's get back to your comments. Tom Osborne gives us $2 to say Utah fans more irritating than Skylar White. Wow, that's pretty irritating. That's pretty irritating. RB, maybe the Apple deal looks bad at this time, but are we missing the potential if Apple buys part of ESPN, which they will not do, if not all of it, and take over the market? So what this specifically is talking about is ESPN's pursuit of an equity partner. And we have extensive sourcing and reporting on this that says ESPN, indeed is looking for an equity partner, which means a small share. And whether that is a professional sports league like the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, or whether that is a media company that can help with distribution. A lot of people have pointed to Apple. The difference here is Apple and Disney are competitors. There's no question about that. Disney owns ESPN. And there's no question that ESPN and Comcast, NBC Universal, are business partners already. It makes a lot of sense, and reports have said that ESPN Disney is already in talks with NBC Universal Comcast for them to pick up a share of ESPN. It is a big, big boom in distribution. It pushes the digital product much further for ESPN. And the thing you have to remember is ESPN is not looking to be a TV network anymore. They are looking to provide the world's leading sports content directly to consumers. That's a term, DTC, directly to consumer, likely starting in 2025 or 2026. They already have the business model in place with ESPN, the app, and ESPN Plus. I think it only makes more sense to do a deal with somebody like NBC Universal and Comcast, whereas Apple, who has struggled to distribute MLS and has struggled to get a deal over the line with the Pac-12, NBC Universal has massive sports holdings already. It makes too much sense for them to own a minority stake in ESPN. I think that is the eventual outcome there. I don't believe that Disney will ever own outright ESPN. There would have to be, Bob Iger would have to get run over by like Barbie and her Corvette. That was
a Barbie reference.
Barbie reference. Yeah. Bob Iger would have to get hit by a train, and everybody at ESPN would have to fall out of an apartment building window or something.
Yeah.
Like the tragedies would have to be long and lengthy at ESPN for that ever to happen.
Yeah, Bob Iger's a businessman, and business people understand that you don't need to own 100% of anything.
Correct.
You need to own 51%. You need to have a controlling stake in the decision-making process. That's all that matters. So ESPN's challenge right now is they're not liquid. They are very much stagnant and held up. And so everyone seems to confuse the concept of selling a company with selling an equity stake. That's two different things. So
very different things.
So we're not talking about ESPN looking or Disney looking to sell ESPN. We're talking about Disney looking to get ESPN more liquid so Bob Iger can be more aggressive, so Bob Iger can make Disney more money because ESPN is incredibly profitable and Disney is not.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't see it happening. That's just my opinion. I think there is certainly a lot of people who talk about it. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I really don't. Let's see. Bigfoot gives us $10 to say that if the Pac-12 universities get into the 12, what would it cost for them to rebrand the Big 12 universities? Two Big 12 universities. It's interesting. We were looking at Oregon today. Oregon doesn't have conference affiliation in their recruiting pictures the last 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody notice that? Like the recruits, they go put on uniforms, take pictures. Oregon doesn't have conference logos on those pictures right now. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's not cheap, but it's also, it's not millions by any stretch. Now, you have to paint the field correctly, BYU, but they might need to reach out to Utah Tech for insight. They've done it a few times. See what he did there?
Yeah.
The sleeping
the
giant.
rebrand.
DW2CB for $2. Utah's board isn't meeting. Give me a break. They're not. We spoke to somebody directly at the board who said there is no meeting on the books until the 8th. 5 days from now, which feels a little long. Justin Games, at least Stanford and Cal know how to pull out.
Damn.
Another pull out there. Big shout out to Rob Simpson.
Hang on one second.
Come
Okay.
on, Jake. Pull it out. Mark Stone for $2. Hey, Jake, just the tip.
Thank
I read
you.
that one earlier.
Thank you.
You know. Let's see. Patriot text for $5. If Utah gets left out of expansion, how does the portal wreck their team?
The portal.
I think you'd have to be far more aggressive in the portal if you are not in the Big 12.
Look, if Utah gets left out of the Big 12, you need to understand something. That football program is going to get burned to the ground. You need to understand that. Kyle Whittingham, in my opinion, will retire or go to another program.
But wait a minute, if you get left out of the Big 12, Arizona State, Utah, Stanford, and Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State, that's 6 members. Aren't you trying to merge with the Mountain West? I think that's a P5 conference. I think if you have those 6 members, San Diego, Wales, Regina State, and Boise State, that right there is the makings. Right? You have a way then to, in my opinion, you have a way then to keep the remaining members of the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. I think that brings everybody up, and I think you're a P5 conference.
Yeah.
Would you disagree with that?
If they are, they're definitely the lowest P5 conference, no doubt. But yeah, you can. It just feels like you have to justify it because you've got Mountain West teams in your conference. That's what it feels like to me. Like San Diego State, okay, free pass, cool. You could be a P5 team, all right, great. But you're not gonna get me to be like, yeah, Boise State, wow, they should be a P5.
But then what do you say about Illinois? What do you say about Indiana in football? What do you say about Iowa?
What do I say about Indiana in basketball, though? What do I say about
Indiana's pretty damn good,
right? What do I say?
But so is San Diego State.
Yeah, for 1 year.
But they've been building.
Yeah.
Right.
But do you see what I mean about this? You kind of have to. There's sort of this justification that has to happen.
But I think there's a justification at the. What do you say about Vanderbilt? What do you say about Georgia Tech? What do you say about pretty much everybody in the ACC?
I guess the difference is I'm not trying to be argumentative. They're there already. We don't
They're
have to
there
say
already.
anything.
That's exactly right.
Like, we don't have to say anything because they're there already.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to talk about, hey, when realignment happens again through this next TV cycle, yeah, Georgia Tech is going to come up, right? Like, Boston College is going to come up. Illinois is going to come up. But again, I agree that the idea of Mountain West and Pac-12 schools merging to form a P or a G5, it makes sense. I think the other thing we got to talk about is, dude, we've never had to downgrade a P5 to a G5 or define what a P5 means or whatever. We've just had a system here. We've had structure, and now that structure's changing.
Yeah, and the answer is we don't know because we've never been here.
Yeah. I don't know what defines a P5. Like, typically in business, it's like, okay, a P5 is 10 schools, and they got to have this much admission, and you got to have this and that, and
you got to play this many games.
Like, that's typically what you get in business, but we don't have that. You just have 5 conferences here, and then you've got D1, D2, D3. Like,
But this has ultimately been the issue with the Pac-12 for the better part of a year now.
Yeah.
There's no P5 for you to add.
Yeah,
right?
That's the other huge problem.
And if you, let's say this whole thing goes to shit and you wind up merging with the Mountain West, the first phone call you better make is to Tulane. The second phone call you better make is to probably SMU because they have money. That's their value. They have money because they're not giving you Dallas. Mm-hmm. But if you get Tulane and SMU, you add those 2 teams to the remnants of the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, I think you have
geographically, you certainly have a P5.
You have a P5. I would agree with that. But if those 6 teams are in this conference, you certainly have a P5. Now, if we're being realistic, I think Arizona State and Utah are going to the Big 12. I think Oregon and Washington are going to the Big 10. I think that the travesty here is that Oregon State's going to be lumped into a pretty... Oregon State's getting a lump of coal for Christmas, dude. Like, this is a This is a tragedy for Oregon. I honestly, I'm not being dramatic. I don't think that's too strong of a word.
And they're going to get piped on that Reeser renovation.
Absolutely, they're going to get piped.
That debt load's about to get a lot heavier.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's run through a couple more of these. Kelsey Hamer, so do you think the Utes make the Big 12? I do. Rick G, thank you for the super sticker for $2. Addison Hester for $5. How do y'all think this, quote, conference consolidation will affect auto bids to the playoff?
Another great question.
A lot of people don't know this, and it's public knowledge. I don't know why. You guys understand the auto bids starting in 2025 and beyond, 26, 27, 28, 29, those are all unlocked. Those have not been defined. So I think what's going to happen is that's where you're going to figure out to the question, and I think it's a great question that you ask every day. Well, is the Pac-12, if it survives in any form or fashion with one tire and the motor's on fire, is it still a P5 hunk of crap? Well, we'll find out when those bids are locked.
Is it simply a matter of the College Football Playoff Committee deciding a conference is not a P5? I mean, is that literally what we're talking? Like, is it a thing where maybe it's more of a thing where you don't get defined? Maybe on paper you're still technically a P5, but if the College Football Playoff Committee never puts any of your teams in the playoff,
do you understand how much pull Stanford has? If it's just Condi Rice alone. But have you guys ever looked at the board of trustees around most of the Pac-12 schools? Utah's a great example of this. We were talking about this Saturday or something.
Yeah.
I think there's 3 members of the Utah board of trustees. We were looking at them.
Yeah.
That have PhDs or master's degrees from Stanford.
Yeah, and some of them are out of the legal program at Stanford.
I mean, you're talking about Harvard MBAs. I mean, you guys, Stanford has immense power in college sports. Immense. I have a hard time seeing Stanford in the Mountain West. I don't know what eventually happens. I feel 95% they're not getting into the Big Ten. I had a guy today who has never been wrong say it's over. We're not going to 18. They're not going to 18. I don't want to give his identity away, but we're not going to 20. We're sticking at 18. Mm-hmm. Oregon and Washington, it's done. That was exactly the conversation I had today. Like, I can't believe Stanford ends up in the Mountain West. That would be just an absolute haberdashery. I don't know. That's probably not the right word. Jesse Donovan for $5. Jesse, how are you? I would love Arizona State, and Utah in the Big 12 fun games. Go Okie State Pokes.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Stone. Monty, it's only the tip. Thank you. Troy Hester. So do they issue a therapy dog to every Ute student, or is that just for the fans?
Well, it's funny how the tone with Utah fan has now changed to, yeah, Big 12, Big 12, Big 12. Let's get to the Big 12. We're so excited to play BYU.
Guys, I'm telling you, the Utah fan base is despised. And I just will continue to say, and over the last 4 days, I've heard it, not regularly, but enough to know. I think Utah's image has been damaged by their fan base. I do. I think the social media, you tough guy, you've hurt your team.
Yeah.
You've hurt your team. And there's two in particular that I'm not going to shout out. One of them was mentioned to me by name today. As, wow, that guy is a Twitter terrorist was the term that was used.
Jesus.
And it's just not for every dude who was like, hey man, I apologize, like for the very best Utah fans, the passionate fans that are out there, there's 20, 30 of them on Twitter that are just cretins.
Yeah.
And it's really sad because it's just not the truth about Utah fan base. The Utah Ute fan base is phenomenal. Their alumni are phenomenal. Their boosters, their donors, their leadership, phenomenal. But their fan base on Twitter just destroys all of that, man.
Yeah.
Tom Osborne, Board of Regents meeting on Pac-12 network to ensure privacy. See what he did? They put it on the network because nobody can see it, so it's private. It's a good point. Mark Stone for $5. Larry and George Kliavkov always pulled out.
Mm-hmm.
See what he did there? All right, let's get some shout-outs to new members. K-State by 90.
Let's go.
Hey, by the way, for everybody who joined the members-only content, because a lot of you have in the last 3 weeks, make sure you DM Jake.
Yeah.
You get entry as a premium. There's 2 tiers of membership on our channel. For $1.99, all your comments get read. For $9.99 a month, you get into our members-only Instagram group, and it's a great community.
Yeah.
It really, really is. All of this realignment talk alone has been phenomenal on the old Insta machine.
Yeah.
DM Jake, SLC Jake on Instagram. He'll add you to that group. You have to be in the $9.99 tier, though, to get in.
Yeah.
So K-State by 90. YouTube user has become a member of the show.
Nice.
Oh, God. I don't want to know who this is. But this is the word I said I could not say. The Mike Leach Meteorological Society.
Let's go.
Meteorological is one of the most difficult words that I have ever had to say.
Mike Leach is a goat, dude.
Love my guy. Love him. Rick Jr., it's pretty wild how a couple of YouTube hacks have been right on so much the past year. Thank you, Rick.
Appreciate you, Rick.
I appreciate that. And we've really worked hard. And not that you guys give a damn about this, but one, hit the like button because that helps the channel grow. We're trying to get to 1,000 likes every show. We're at 856, so if you have not, please hit the like button now. If everybody here hits the like button, it's over. We've got it.
Yeah, like the pack. It's over.
Yeah. And if you're not subscribed, please, it's free. We have 21,500 or 659 subscribers. Would love to get those 341 done right now. If you don't subscribe to this channel, please hit the subscribe button. It really makes a difference for us. But you guys may or may not know this. We started this show on our own. I've worked in radio for 25 plus years. I've worked at ESPN. I've worked at Sporting News. I've had a great career. We started this YouTube channel, I think, a little less than 2 years ago with like 7 subscribers. We didn't get serious about it until about 1.5 years ago. And the explosion has been amazing because we've really worked hard to be credible, and we've really worked hard to bring you guys into the show so you'll comment, you'll like the show, You'll be part of it because without your opinion, it's just two dudes sitting here talking.
Mm-hmm.
So we really appreciate that you guys are here. And we really appreciate that you guys partake in the show. And I just love it. I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you for being here. And now we're just 70 likes away from 1,000. Make it 69. Let's go. Appreciate you guys so much. Big Bad Brass Bulls.
Yeah, Bulls.
Gives us $10 to say this year BYU wins the Big 12 title. Hey, man, you should open the garage before you
Dude, do we need to talk about
car on?
What's your contact in Colombia for that cocaine you're on?
Gets into the college football playoff, wins their second natty. I get married to that supermodel next door. Hold on. Don't do it. Monkeys are flying out of my butt again. I'll get back to you.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
James L. AAC pays more than the Mountain West. Cal, Stanford, PNW states join Rice and Tulane after SMU goes to the PAC.
Nah.
But see, the difference is Oregon State right now today is you're going to see they're going to win 10 games this year. They're going to be a motivated, like I think a Mountain West Pac-12 remnant merger, I think is far better than going to the AAC, in my opinion. Polk State gives us $2. Thank you, sir. Hero 75. I guess Stanford, at least going independent, they have the money to not really worry about the best media deal. And likely in a few years, they would be the most likely partner to come into the Big Ten with Notre Dame. Maybe it plays out that way.
I mean, you're not wrong about them having billions.
But where are they getting a TV deal? If the Pac-12 as a conference can't get a TV deal, is Stanford going to Amazon Prime? Where are you getting a TV deal?
Gotta go somewhere, bro.
And by the way, do you know how difficult it is to schedule right now? It is so hard to schedule. Tom Homo at BYU should have won a Lifetime Achievement Award just for the schedules he built as an independent.
Yeah.
Do you know how difficult it is to schedule if your name's not Notre Dame? I mean, honest to God, if the hand of Jesus Christ was not writing the schedule for Notre Dame, do you know how difficult that is? I just can't see them going
in God's name, image, and likeness.
Landon, who's been a member of the show for 3 months, thank you, Landon, says Utah is gone, just waiting on Arizona State and Arizona. I would agree with that. Alex Crows, if the big land's just Notre Dame and Florida State, who would be number 20?
Dude.
I mean, you're taking Oregon and Washington.
Dude, we're years away from that, bro.
I think we are.
Dude, Florida State. And again, I'm not even an ACC guy, right? Like, I'm not. I mean, I'll watch Duke, UNC, or whatever, but I'm not some ACC fanatic. But I know how to read paperwork. And the grant of rights has you locked in. That thing's ironclad. It's over. You're not leaving until, I believe it's 2035, I think it is the year that thing expires. So you can keep barking up that tree, but it's not going to get you anywhere. So to your question, the Big Ten is not even looking at ACC schools. What the Big Ten instead is saying by saying, hey, we're not going to 20, our cap is 18, is they're leaving availability for those ACC schools in 10 years, bro. Or I guess it'd be, 12 years? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know how Florida State thinks they're getting out of it.
Yeah.
I'm honest to God. Florida State, and I'm trying not to be a jerk about FSU, but Florida State's a laughingstock right now. They're quite literally getting laughed at because they think they're like, I don't know who told them that LSD was still a thing, but this acid trip that FSU's on is remarkable. Nobody wants you. Nobody likes you. You are not valuable because you won't shut up. Learn your lesson from the Pac-12 and stop talking. Go win games. Go get in the NCAA tournament. Go to the Sweet 16. Go to the Elite 8. Go play on Monday night in the tournament. Then bitch and moan. Go get into the college football playoff. Then bitch and moan. Like, do something. I'm so tired of the rhetoric. Man, I'm so tired of the rhetoric. Cowboy Country, what's up, my guy, for $5? Utah's Board of Regents. Next meeting is August 8th. They don't need to speed that up. Just call Brett Yormark and say we're coming. The problem with that is I mean, 5 days. Do you know how long 5 days is right now? It might as well be 5 years.
Yeah, dude.
5 days. You get a week ago, this was a completely different script.
Yeah.
It's Thursday, the 3rd of August. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, this is done. Dude, it's over. It's over. I don't see any way that they can wait. I really don't.
No.
Cool Blues 71 for $2 says Pac-12 is a lesson on how to not do business. Correct.
Yeah. And I also think this thing about the Apple deal being taken away at the end of business tomorrow is crucial.